That's the President speaking in Parliament just a little earlier this afternoon. Well, I'm joined now by political analyst Professor Sethulego Matebesi. Prof, thank you so much for joining us. So it struck me and the team, we were chatting, that the President seemed a lot more forthcoming about answering specific pala questions today. But the question I have for you is, did we get any new information?
Good evening, Shelley, and good evening to South Africans. Yes, I would just also want to start off by the President definitely very forthcoming this time around. And I think to a certain extent the President did answer the questions that he was asked. I never got a sense that the President do not want to answer the questions that were asked by parliamentarians. Perhaps what I found a little bit disturbing was that some parliamentarians will ask questions, and it seems to me they already has the answers. They want the President to respond in a certain way, and that for me is unacceptable. I mean, there's various, as the President have also correctly highlighted, various other measures and processes currently taking place, and you want to afford the President the opportunity to read your questions, but yet they didn't want to afford the President an opportunity to respond to the questions, and that's why for me it seems as if and especially the opposition want nothing but they want the President to admit that perhaps there was a criminal offence that took place.
I have to say that, yes, there were a lot of shenanigans and points of order, but the most interesting for me was towards the end of the afternoon with the supplementary questions, and it was the question from John Steenhuisen and then from Julius Malema, and they were able to pose their questions and they got their answers. So with John Steenhuisen, he was talking about that the Constitution says the President has to avoid any situation involving a conflict between your position as President and any particular private interest. And he says he's concerned there was a conflict of interest because you used your state resources as President. You spoke directly to your presidential security team to tell them to take action about a farm, which is your personal interest. And I thought that Steenhuisen had actually made a good point. The President then saying, well, I don't see a conflict because ultimately the matter is being processed by the police. And I handed it over to Ruda, his security detail, and he decided what to do and what not to do. And then Julius Malema following up with a similar sort of question, a little bit more robust as his style, but very much on the same sort of thing. He says, which procedure were you following by reporting it to a general? Shouldn't you have just done what any ordinary citizen did? You know, he said that I don't believe I abused my power. I am surrounded by police officials. I informed them. And my manager also spoke to police officials. Do you think they're labouring this point because this might be the area where he could be most vulnerable, a grey area, if you will, because he says that he left the management of the farm to others, but the point at which he was informed about the robbery and how he handled it in that moment could be the real issue. Am I right in that interpretation, or do you see other issues as well?
Yeah, no, well, you're quite right, Shelley. What I really like about John Steenhuisen today, he did not waste time. I mean, straightforward, and his questions were quite clear. I mean, I could easily understand, but very robust questions coming from Julius Malema. I strongly believe that, for my take on the pala issue, that the President and his advisors did not handle it well. But what stands good for the President, I do believe the President is not an ordinary citizen. You don't expect any President of any country rushing up to report any cases to a police station. The President was right to report this to those close to him, and I think that for me is an acceptable question. But I mean, somebody of his caliber would have followed this up a couple of weeks ago, later, or even months later, to say, but what happened to this case that I reported? And I think that's where the whole confusion comes from, and perhaps why also people like Malema believe that perhaps he have, that whole notion that the president has abused his power. But I do believe that the president is definitely surrounded by police officials, but at the end of the day, he cannot, at the end of the day, let the responsibility in the hands of those who are around him. He also had to apply his mind. By the way, he is the leader, after all.
The president was asked a range of questions. He answered around issues of gangsterism, getting the trains running again, also child hunger, family hunger, a very important issue. Inevitably, the issue of power stations and load shedding came up. Did you hear anything new around the issue of electricity? I mean, we have previously played a clip where he explained that one of the new power stations, I think it was Medupi, is now operating at 85% capacity. Did you hear anything new and noteworthy on this power crisis of ours?
Nothing new, Shelley. And once again, the strongest critique coming from John Steenhuisen, again, also going back to say, but you said this in 2015. What is currently happening? The fact of the matter about Eskom, they are looking for more money. And I don't think the issue here is fund. It's funding, but the whole issue here is about proper planning. And it seems as if the government of the day does not have a plan. Or, and if those plans along the line did not work, the president should have taken South Africans into confidence. But there was one question that the president was also asked, and I think that was from Julius Malema. And that's why it took some time where he explained his whole background with the legal fraternity. And I think he was trying to gather some strength before he answered the question. But this time around, in general, I strongly believe that, as you've indicated, the president was much more forthcoming, but also very cautious not to, once again implicate himself or say things today which he will later have to come and explain why did he mention some of those things.
All right. Well, thank you so much for chatting to us this evening, political analyst Professor Sethulego Matebesi. Now,